Hello, here with another review. We're going to do something that I've been meaning to do for quite a few years now. Basically, a little while ago, 4 or 5 years ago now, I reviewed Station to Station by David Bowie. And so far, that's the only David Bowie album I've done because, in my opinion, that's his best album. And for a long, long time, I've been meaning to do this album that I'm going to review today. And basically, I keep going to do it and then I forget about it and then I get sidetracked and it never gets done. That's been what's going on the last 4 or 5 years. But when I uploaded my last video, Max, if you're watching, hello, thank you, reminded me of this album, and he asked if I would review it, and here I am reviewing it. Thank you for reminding me to do it. This one, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, from 1980, David Bowie, obviously. First thing I'll do is I'll show you all the copies of this album I own, and it's this is the only one. That is the front cover. That there is the back cover. I don't know if on originals this was gatefold because the artwork, when you look at it, was obviously supposed to open up properly, but it doesn't. Anyway, within you have a number of things. You've got the record, it's just black vinyl, so I won't bother showing you that because I'll no doubt end up struggling to get it back in. You've also got these inserts. This is just a spare record sleeve. And you have the lyrics for the album, which is cool. I always like to have the lyrics. As it opens up, there you go, a proper lyric sheet. Very nice. There's actually a list of personnel as well, which is quite cool. Always good to have the personnel. Anyway, this album can go on here for now. You won't can read the bottom, but there we go. I'm sure you've seen the cover before, and if you haven't, I don't know where you've been living or why you're watching this video if you've never seen the cover for Scary Monsters before. Anyway, iPad, lots to talk about, you lucky things. So first things first, this album, it was released on the 12th of September 1980, and it was recorded quite quick really when you think about it, just from February to April 1980. It was recorded at Power Station Studios in New York and Good Earth Studios in London, which I believe at the time was Tony Visconti's personal studios. Speaking of which, Tony Visconti produces this album alongside David Bowie. This would be the last time Visconti would work with Bowie for quite a while, probably about 20 years until he would next work with him. I can't remember what it was. The next album he worked on after this, it was Heathen probably or something like that. But yeah. So this album is the first one that Bowie released since his critically acclaimed Berlin trilogy, which was Low, Heroes and Lodger from 1977 to 1979. But the thing with the Berlin trilogy, although it had been critically very well acclaimed and artistically very well acclaimed, commercially they weren't the most successful albums. So, coming off the back of that, Bowie decided that he wanted to make a commercial album. An album that would be artistically satisfying but also commercially satisfying. And that's what he's trying to do here. It was one of the first things he told Tony Visconti, that he wanted to make a commercial album. So the musicians who play on this album are largely the ones that Bowie had been playing with on the Berlin trilogy and since 1976's Station to Station. Obviously the big omission was Brian Eno, who does not return from the Berlin trilogy. I don't think there was a falling out or anything. It was just a case that they'd gone as far as they could, collaborating together. Anyway, the album predominantly features the musicians who Bowie had been playing with, like I say, but there is a guest appearance from Pete Townshend on this album, which I'll get to later on in the video, but basically he showed up during the sessions. This was in a period of his life when Pete Townshend wasn't in a good place, and he was in a very, very bad mood when he showed up to do this album, as you would be, and if you were going through what he was going through at the time. And apparently what he did record, Tony Visconti and David Bowie just lowered it really deep in the mix. You can hardly hear it. That was on Because You're Young, but I'll get to that later in the video. So, unlike the Berlin trilogy, Bowie wanted to spend a lot more time on this album working on the lyrics. And I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how it works with the Berlin trilogy, but I think a lot of it, the lyrics were improvised in the studio, and a lot of the time he was probably making them up on the spot or writing them while they were recording the backing tracks. He wasn't wanting to do anything like that here. He wanted to go in fully aware of how the song was probably going to end up sounding and how the lyrics were going to be before he went into the studio. So the cover photo here, it's a large scale Collage by artist Edward Bell, and it features Bowie in his outfit from the from the Ashes to Ashes music video. Also, if you look on the back here, you have also got the Heroes cover, the Lodger cover, and the Low cover. I think that's it. I don't think there's any other ones. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, that's it's a cool cover. I've always liked the cover for this album, to be honest. So the album itself, it had 4 singles released from it: Ashes to Ashes, Fashion, Scary Monsters, and Up the Hill Backwards. Ashes to Ashes was the lead single. It was released prior to the album in August 1980, and it was a huge success. It originally got to number 4, is where it debuted on the charts. And then Bowie appeared on Top of the Pops, or I think maybe the video got debuted on Top of the Pops, and then it went to number 1, which was Bowie's second number 1 single. It was his first since Space Oddity. It got to number 1 when it was re-released in 1975. And speaking of the music video for Ashes to Ashes, at the time it was the most expensive music video ever made. At the time it cost £250,000, which in today's money is well over £1 million. Probably getting up towards 2 million, the way inflation is at the minute. So yeah, Ashes to Ashes was a commercially successful single here in the UK, as was Fashion. Fashion, the second single, reached number 5. Not quite as commercially successful as Ashes to Ashes, but yeah, still alright. As for the other singles, I can't remember where they got to. I haven't wrote it down here. I want to say they got to around 20. Somewhere around the 20 mark, but they weren't in the top 10 anyway. Anyway, upon its release, this album was a commercial success, so Bowie had gotten what he wanted. It became his first number 1 album since 1974's Diamond Dogs. So yeah, it's crazy how many great albums he released in between that period, and none of them got to number 1. But he finally returned to number 1 with this one. Here in the UK, at least. Over in the States, it got to number 12, which again was an improvement on where his albums had been charting. So critically, at the time, this album got universal acclaim. Everybody seemed to love it, and rightfully so, because it's a great album. And to me, this album is like a bridge album. In some ways, I was going to say the perfect Bowie album, but I don't think it's quite to the point where you can call it perfect. But for the vast amount of people, this is a good entry point for him, because it kind of perfectly blends everything together and bridges the gap. You've kind of got the wacky 70s weird Bowie stuff on here, but you've also got the much more commercial 80s stuff when he sold out, as some people would argue. So yeah, I think that's the reason why this album is also very popular, because it kind of just blends everything together, and it's like, here he really found a good formula where he can be that kind of weirdo that he was. If not, that's not meant as an insult, by the way, but he can also be commercial, so he can appeal to everyone. Now, when this album came out, Bowie was originally planning in 1981 to conduct a number of tours in support of it, but there was nothing, because obviously on December 8th, 1980, John Lennon was killed, and David Bowie and John Lennon had been very good friends. And at the time, Bowie was in New York because he was acting in some play. I can't remember the play's name, but he was acting in it anyway. And it also was discovered, I can't remember if it was soon after or quite a bit after, that the prick who killed John Lennon had also considered Bowie as a target. And obviously Lennon's death and the fact that Bowie was also considered a target, and that could have been him, really shook him, and there was no tours after that to support this album. He was quite heavily affected by Lennon's death, and he disappeared. He went off and became a recluse for a little while, just staying in his home in Switzerland, which was a shame that we never got any tour in support of this album, because this was Bowie at his peak, really, some would argue. This album itself, it would be Bowie's last release on RAC Records, because he felt that they were just exploiting him. You know, they were just re-releasing stuff, his older stuff, to try and exploit and get as much money out of him as they could, which he wasn't very happy about. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say for the background, so we shall now dive into the track-by-track review here, see what I make of each track, and for the most part, it's going to be very good. Right, so the opening track is It's No Game, number 1, which I always thought was It's No Game, part 1, but I've only just discovered recently that it's actually number 1, not part 1. Anyway, this track, it's a very, very good opening track. And the first thing you will notice is the spoken word part. Female spoken word in Japanese. This is Japanese artist. I apologise in advance, I'm about to butcher the pronunciation of this name. I think it's either Michai or Mikai. I think it's Mikai. Mikai Hirota. Mikai Hirota, we'll call her. Might be wrong. Apologies if that's wrong. But anyway, she does the spoken word part of this in Japanese, and Bowie employed her apparently to try, in his words, to break down the particular kind of sexist attitude that there was at the time surrounding Japanese women. I don't know as well if Yoko Ono played any inspiration on him wanting to do this. I don't know. But in terms of Bowie's actual performance on this song, he's practically screaming his way through this. Yeah, he sounds absolutely furious. He's raging. He's very, very annoyed. Something has really upset him, and this is him very, very angry about it. And the instrumentation on this song is also fab. It's very much verging on hard rock, this, which is not really a genre Bowie is massively associated with, but he's doing it here, and he's doing it very well, screaming his way through it and sounding very annoyed. I love the way at the end as well, when the guitars are playing out and they're looping at the end, he's screaming shut up at them, just at the absolute top of his voice. He's literally screaming shut up. It's a great way to end a song, shouting at your band to be quiet. I love the lyrics in this song as well, especially the lyrics like, to be insulted by these fascists is so degrading. I'm not entirely sure what this is referencing to, but Bowie himself had been getting a lot of criticism, especially during his Thin White Duke era, when he said controversial statements, about Hitler, where he said Hitler was the first pop star and he was just as good as Jagger. And there was a photo, I think, where he was allegedly doing a Nazi salute while standing up in a car. Now, it's a bit disputed, this, because some people have claimed what happened was there was some photographers there, and Bowie was putting his hand up like that to wave at his fans, and the photographer has taken a photo as he's in the process of raising his hand, and just happens to have caught him managed to get a photo where it looks like he's doing a Nazi salute, but I don't think he was. But yeah, fascism, it's a funny thing. I mean, it's still about, isn't it, really? I mean, just go on Twitter. Twitter's full of fascists. It's interesting, though. Most people on Twitter would assume they're not fascists, but they are. Anyway, I'm going off topic there, onto a rant. We'll go on to the next track, which is Up the Hill Backwards. I love this song, contender for my favourite on the album. Apparently the song itself is about the struggles of facing a crisis, which of course Bowie was at this point, because he was going through a divorce from his first wife, Angie. So yeah, that's what this song is apparently about. I love the vocals on this song. It's some of the best as well on the entire album. The harmonies are great. I don't know exactly who it is he's harmonising with. I think it's with his band, to be honest. I think Tony Visconti's singing on this one as well. But yeah, the harmonies, they're wonderful. I've read somewhere someone describing this song as a bit gospel, and it is actually. If you listen to it, you could hear like a gospel choir probably singing on this. Really good tune. I love the lyric as well. I'm okay, you're so, which apparently is based off some 1967 novel, which was called I'm okay, you're okay. It was something about mental health and things, but Bowie has misquoted it and said I'm okay, you're so, which kind of works better actually in the lyrics of this song, rather than I'm okay, you're okay, which sounds a bit boring to be honest, but you're so sounds a bit better. Anyway, yeah, Up the Hill Backwards, one of the highlights of the album. Great track. Yeah, definitely a completely different type of song to It's No Game number 1. Yeah, great song. Right, after that, track 3, we have the title track, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. It's a great song, this. It's got Bowie doing his Cockney singing accent thing, which he doesn't do that often. I think this was possibly the last time. He maybe did it again after this later on, but it would be a while until he did it again. But yeah, I love when he does this sort of thing with his voice. It gives it this punk sounding feel, which this song is. It's kind of verging on a bit punk, this. It's got some of the best lyrics on the album as well. It's got stuff like, well, she could have been a killer if she didn't walk the way she did, and she did. In fact, I'm going to have a look at the lyrics for this one because there's some great ones. She asked for my love and I gave her a dangerous mind. I love that lyric as well. Now she's stupid in the streets and she can't socialise. I love the little girl and I'll love her till the day she dies. Which sounds a bit of a degrading lyric really, but apparently the song is about a woman's withdrawal from the world and her descent into madness. Whether Bowie knew someone like this, I don't know. Or if it's just fictitious. No idea. But yeah, like I said, it's quite a bit punk sounding, this song. And the guitar from Robert Fripp in particular is fantastic. The lead guitar in this song is probably the highlight of it, along with Bowie's vocals. Yeah, really like Scary Monsters. Great track. Again, it's another contender for best on the album. Right, track 4, we have the lead single and without doubt the most famous song off the album, Ashes to Ashes. It's a classic. It's classic David Bowie, this. Most people know this song. And I absolutely love it. Again, contender for my favourite on the album. Major Tom is back. Ironically, this single got to number 1, as did Space Oddity. So by this point, this was his second number 1 single. Both his singles that got to number 1 were about the Major Tom character. Anyway, this is the first time we've heard from Major Tom since 1969. And he's now a junkie and he's all alone up in space. He's just been sort of left there. And the lyrics as well, Bowie has said I don't know if Bowie's actually came out and said this, or if this was just an interpretation, which is probably an accurate interpretation, that they are about Bowie's experience with drugs in the 70s and about his withdrawal and when he became a junkie, really, especially around the Station to Station era when he was addicted to cocaine. Now, I wrote here, is this the perfect Bowie tune? It could be, because it very much has something for everything. It's a very commercial song. It does sound like very early 80s. It's quite synth heavy, but lyrically it's very David Bowie in the 70s. It has really got something for everything, something for everyone. And yeah, I just think it's a great song. It's, you know, the lyrics are great. Ashes to ashes, funk to funky. We know Major Tom's a junkie. I'm stuck with a valuable friend. I'm happy. Hope you're happy too. Although one of the lyrics, if I'm not wrong, is I've loved all I've needed, love, sordid details following, which I've always misheard. I always thought it was I've laughed all I've needed, love, sordid details following, which is a much better lyric. I mean, I'm not going to compare my songwriting because I can't write a song to David Bowie, but I'm sorry, in my opinion, a better lyric there, it would have been I've laughed all I've needed, love, sordid details following. It's like giving in to love. Giving in to the female population. Anyway, yeah, like I say, perfect Bowie tune. It's probably got something for everyone, this. At the time as well, the video was considered revolutionary. It was so expensive. £250,000 it cost at the time. As I said earlier, I think in 2021 that was about 1.2 million. It's probably even more now. Bowie himself has obviously thought very highly of this tune because he went as far as to say, I think it was in 2000, that this was one of the best songs he's ever written. So yeah, great song. If you've never heard it, I don't know how you've ended up watching this video if you've never heard Ashes to Ashes, but if you haven't, give it a listen because I'm telling you, it is a wonderful song. It is, yeah, it is, I've said contender for best on the album. It is, musically speaking, probably the best on the album. It's just, you know, you like to be a bit edgy and not go for the main single off the album as the best track. Anyway, track 5 and the closing track of side 1 is Fashion. This song here is a good indicator for the direction Bowie was about to head in the 80s. And ironically as well, it was also the last song recorded for the album, which kind of would make sense. I love this song. It's just proper funky. It's got a bit of a reggae vibe, but it's also a bit disco with the bass and everything. The bass does drive this song. I love it. Very funky. Bowie himself, he just sounds so cool when he's singing this. It's like when he's singing songs like Boys Keep Swinging as well. He just sounds really cool. He's like the coolest guy ever to grace this world. The vibe of this song as well, it's kind of similar in some ways to Golden Years. If I'm being honest, I think Golden Years itself is a better song than Fashion. Although Fashion is Fashion a more famous song? Fashion is a pretty famous song. It tends to be when he puts a greatest hits album out, or a compilation album, that Fashion is on it. but then so is Golden Years. I love the way as well that Bowie's kind of arguing with himself on this song. The way he'll sing the line "Listen to me," and then the backing vocals will go "Listen to me," and then Bowie will sing "Don't listen to me." I think I'm right. Listen to me, don't listen to me. Talk to me, don't talk to me. Dance with me, don't dance with me. No, beep beep. The way he's contradicting himself. It's like he's having an argument with himself. Sounds really cool. The song itself is apparently about fashion and attack, and it's an attack on individuals who mandate strict observation of fashion trends, whatever that means. Yeah, like I say, it's one of Bowie's most famous songs. It's just a good song, fashion. Gotta love it. Anyways, that's side one of the album finished, and what side? Every track on side one of this album, you can argue, is the best thing on the album. It's a really, really strong thing, and if only side two could stay that strong. But it starts off strong anyway with Teenage Wildlife. This is nearly 7 minutes long. It's one of the longest. It is the longest song on the album, and it's one of the longest songs of Bowie's career. I think his longest song is it Black Star or Station to Station? I can't remember now off the top of my head. But this is the longest song on this album, and it is one of his longest. The tune itself has been compared to Heroes, which I can kind of hear just in the instrumentation and stuff. Heroes is a better song and more famous song than this, but nevertheless, I think this is a great song. One of the highlights of the album for me. It's just as strong as anything on the first side, this. The song itself is apparently about taking a short view on life and not looking too far ahead into the future and trying to predict oncoming knocks. It's basically saying live in the moment. But some have also commented that the song is about Bowie looking back on his youth and what he used to have and what he doesn't have anymore. Speaking of Bowie, his vocals on this song, they're great. He gets to some really high notes on here, which, I really like. And the backing vocals on this have been compared to the sort of thing that the Ronettes used to do in the 60s. Yeah, good tune. I really like Teenage Wildlife, one of the highlights of the album for sure. Right, after that, we've got track 7, Scream Like a Baby. So up until this point, the album has been so strong. Every track has been brilliant. Unfortunately, the wheels come off a bit for me now. And I don't really care for this song. I never have done. It's apparently about a character called Sam and the narrator as well. They're being held in some prison, some political prison. I wouldn't have known that if I'd not read it online. I wouldn't have picked that up from the lyrics themselves. Bowie himself has described the song as future nostalgia, a past look at something that hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Again, I'd never have picked that up without reading it. Normally I'd skip this song. I don't really care for Scream Like a Baby. Same with the next track, Kingdom Come, which is a cover. It's a cover of a song originally by Tom Verlaine. Verlaine apparently even came to the sessions to play guitar on this track, but Bowie didn't like what he played, neither did Visconti, so they left it off. So he wasted his time going along, really. It's an okay song. I think it's better than Scream Like a Baby, but it's nothing special. It just comes across as filler. Yeah, it just feels like he's trying to fill a gap here because he needed 10 songs. That's why he's doing a cover, because he didn't have. This is his first cover actually since Wild as the Wind on Station to Station, and Wild as the Wind is an absolutely wonderful song, and this unfortunately isn't in the league of that. Neva's track 9, Because You're Young. This is the one that Pete Townsend plays guitar on, although it's apparently buried very deep in the mix because he was in an absolute atrocious mood when he came to play it. Again, this song, it's nothing special. It's okay, but it just comes across a bit as filler. Yeah, the chorus is a bit catchy. I like the way it's the way they sing Because You're Young on the chorus, but yeah, there's not really a lot to say about this track. I just don't really care for it. And then after that, we have the closing track, where thankfully it picks back up again. It's No Game, number 2. So it's it's just the same as the first track, except it's much calmer. It's not hard rock, this anyway. We're back where we started, with a much calmer and laid back Bowie. It's like he's still angry at the same thing, whatever was annoying him, but whatever his actual anger itself has calmed down. He's more accepting of it. He's still annoyed, but he's not shouting and screaming anymore, which is nice. Apparently this was the first thing that was recorded for the album as well. I think I prefer this one actually to the opening track. It hasn't got the Japanese spoken word on it, which is kind of a miss, but I just think the actual song itself is better like this. It's just my opinion. Feel free to disagree. Bowie also sounds tired in his voice when he's singing on this one. I think that's intentionally. He intentionally wants to sound like that. But yeah, it's just just the vibe I get. The instrumentation is fab here, and it's basically a great closing track to end a great album. So I think that's all I've got to say really about Scary Monsters. In terms of, is it the perfect Bowie album? It would be if 3 of the tracks weren't weak. If Kingdom Come, Because You're Young, and Scream Like a Baby weren't on here, and were replaced with much stronger tracks, I think it would be the perfect album, because everything else on this album is great. It's no games, Up the Hill Backwards, Teenage Wildlife, Ashes to Ashes, Scary Monsters, Fashion. Those 6 tracks are absolutely brilliant. Some of Bowie's best. It's just those other 3 that let it down for me. But like I say, this is really a good entry-level Bowie album, and yeah, it does perfectly bridge the gap between the 70s and the 80s. And there is a lot of people out there who will argue that this was Bowie's last great album. Everything after this, or immediately after this at least, was crap. I will eventually review some of those albums, but so I'll save that for when I do it. But I can see why people would argue that, but at the same time, he did go on to do some great stuff. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say for now about this album, so thank you very much for watching anyway, and I will see you in the not too distant future, I hope. Take care.